Hello, good evening. This is News Night. We sincerely apologize for the late start of the news, and it's due to the Gabon African Cup of Nations 2017. This is News Night. My name is Josephine Oppong-Yeboah. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, angry traditional leaders led by the regent of Ashaiman and past members of Parliament of Ashaiman seize out workers of Murphy, a company clearing and demarcating what they describe as free zones lands for sale at Tema Community 21. Meanwhile, massive encroachment is happening along the banks and within the buffer zone of the Lagoon and its tributaries. Majority Leader in Parliament, Asante calls for the support of the Israeli government in the implementation of the One Village, One Dam project pledged to Ghanaians by the NPP government. In news across our borders, Gambia's President Ashaiman has declared a national state of emergency just 2 days before he is supposed to cede power after losing elections last month. Thank you for your time. In our first story, angry traditional leaders led by the regent of Ashaiman and past members of Parliament of Ashaiman have chased out workers of Murphy, a company clearing and demarcating what they describe as free zones lands for sale at Tema Community 21. According to the angry chiefs and people, the land was taken from the people of Ashaiman from the Free Zones Board for national development purposes.
The about 152-acre Community 21 land forms part of land compulsorily acquired by the colonial government in 1952 for the Tema Development Corporation (TDC). But the TDC failed to develop the land and rather granted 21-year agricultural leases to some farmers. In 1997, the government of Ghana declared the parcel of land a free zone residential enclave to the annoyance of the farmers. The Free Zones Board allegedly called in the military to quell any protests and demolish residential structures put up on the land in 2012. Residents now say the land is being demarcated for sale by a company called Murphy on behalf of the Free Zones Board instead of building residential accommodation for workers. The angry chiefs, former MPs and youth, have invaded the land, chased the workers of Murphy out, and pulled down billboards of the company. They say if the land is not being used for what it was originally taken for, then ownership must revert to Ashaiman.
You can go to Ashaiman in front of the street. Every Mondays and Thursday, people are selling on the street for their daily bread, while this land is here. How many people in Ashaiman can buy this land $55,000? How many Ghanaians that their salary can buy a land that Nkrumah give for development for workers in Tema? People are selling. I am a youth, and I've laid down my life to fight for this land, for other generations to come and benefit.
This place, there's the only land left for Ashaiman, and therefore we need here this land for a general hospital, a market, a factory, and any other developmental issues that will come to Ashaiman. On that Ashaiman will have no any other land again. So what we are fighting for is that this land must be released to the chief and then the municipal assembly so that they can use this land for a good purpose.
Ashaiman has been taken for granted for far too long. And these same people who have neglected Ashaiman, they turn around to tell us that we are living in fields. They turn around to tell us that we are living in Zongo. They turn around to tell us that we are living in what do you call it? Mushroom rooms, structures. But if you don't have the land, how can we develop? All that we want is that this place, 21, Free Zone Board, it is not their property.
Yes.
Even if it is their property, they should get back realigned. Whatever agreement they have entered into anybody to come and sell this land. Free Zone, I know, is not established to sell land.
They are calling on President Akufo-Addo to investigate issues surrounding the acquisition of the land by the Free Zones Board. Officials of Murphy say they will respond at the appropriate time.
Away from that story, massive encroachment is reportedly happening along the banks and within the buffer zone of the Lagoon and its tributaries. Environmental activists are appealing to the President, Nana Akufo-Addo, to intervene as direct all encroachers to be driven out. Gabriel Obudai-Pagwashon has the rest of the story.
Much of the lands behind the International Trade Fair Center were farmlands for some natives of La and served as breadbasket for Accra. Over the past decade, though, the area has been turned into residential communities, and the Peshi Lagoon has already begun feeling the impact of the mad rush for lands. Developers have built close to streams, serving as tributaries to the lagoon. In order to avoid water from entering from, floods which may be caused by rainfalls, he has actually raised up pillars before building his story on. So these are some of the things we are saying. People clearly know that they've encroached upon the buffer zone for the Peshi Lagoon. Some of the encroachers have devised smart ways to put up their buildings. Just about, let's say, 10 steps away is a structure being built. About 10 steps away. So that's a pillar right here.
Me, I have swear oath with God, my property, as what I have invested, if I will lose it, I prefer to die than to be poor.
Even when you are wrong and you've done it illegally.
You are talking about when I'm wrong.
Okay.
That is why I do the right things.
Okay.
I've drawn the attention of the EPA, and we have had several meetings with the EPA. We have also had several meetings even with the Environment Ministry, the Presidency, and so, but nothing has been done.
Activists are calling on government to be proactive in addressing this development before it degenerates. Metro News is keeping an eye on this issue and shall keep you updated. From La Chado, this is Gabriel Obudai-Pagwashon reporting for Metro News.
A youth group called Gadangbe Youth, led by Ni Ayufiu Tete, is calling on President Akufo-Addo not to kowtow to any political pressure to appoint Gadangbes as metropolitan, municipal and district chief executives. They warn that they will be forced to organize a mammoth demonstration in opposition should such a thing ever happen.
In the past few days, intense lobbying is said to be taking place to determine which persons are appointed as metropolitan, municipal and district chief executives. Even before the president would make any substantive pronouncement on the issue, the Gadangbe Youth Concerned Pressure Group is warning against any move to appoint non-Gadangbes to be chief executives of cities and towns in Greater Accra region.
People keep saying, which is true, that Gadangbe land is not a cosmopolitan land. That is why we have allowed the non-Gadangbe to become parliamentarians on our land. But there are certain positions that this is MCs. What we are saying, whether you are a non-Gadangbe or not, you should try and fight in your region. You can't fight our interests for it. You don't know the problems facing Gadangbes. That's what I'm saying. It's very simple. Have you seen any Gadangbe who have become a DC or MC in Volta region or Asante region before, not in region?
Failure to heed to their call would lead to a demonstration.
We're going to demonstrate against the president. I'm telling you, we are going to demonstrate. He's my very good friend, but we are going to demonstrate. When you come to Gadangbe issues, I don't joke with certain things, we are going to demonstrate against him.
The group called on all Gadangbes to contribute to efforts to make the Gadangbe states better.
In other news, this is a press release coming from the office of former President Rawlings, and it reads, "Our attention has been drawn to information currently in the public domain of communication between the Land Commission and His Excellency Rawlings, former President of the Republic of Ghana. As per the content of the said communication, a plot was allocated to His Excellency Rawlings for the purposes of the establishment of the Rawlings Foundation. Upon receipt of the notification, His Excellency replied to the said directive and requested for adjoining land to the said property, also for the purposes of the foundation, which intends to dedicate to humanitarian, educational, population control, HIV and AIDS, health-related projects, the preservation of nature, and the promotion and preservation of cultural values." Unfortunately, the response dated May 9, 2016 received no reply till 12th of December 2016. when the secretary to the president, Ambassador Kwesi Kote, discovered the letter misplaced among his papers and wrote to the Minister for Land and Natural Resources to act upon. The lease agreement was thus reached with the government, signed Kobina Ando Amakwa, Communications Director. You're still watching this night. Let's go for a breather. Please stay. Again, you're still watching News Night, coming to you from our studios here at Lagoon. Right after News Night, Good Evening Ghana with Paul Adam Ochi will be coming your way. In other news, it's day 2 of the burial rites of the late Asante Queen Mother, Nana Ifya Kubisawa Ampim II, mother of the Asante King. The king, Osetutu II, and several other sub-chiefs prepare for the final funeral rite of the Queen Mother, who passed away in November 2016.
On Tuesday, January 17th, chiefs from other parts of the country, including members of the National House of Chiefs, various regional House of Chiefs, and heads of corporate institutions, took their turns to pay their last respect to the Asante Hima and express their condolences to the Asante Hene. Wednesday, January 18th, has been set aside for dignitaries, including the presidents Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, former presidents, members of parliament, and dignitaries from Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, South Africa, Uganda, Burkina Faso, Swaziland, Seychelles, and members of the diplomatic corps. Mainshia has changed plans for the church service on Thursday. It will now take place at the Mainshia Dwabirim instead of the St. Cyprian's Anglican Church at Fantin New Town, as planned initially. After the about 2-hour church service on Thursday, the body will be moved to Bantama Royal Mausoleum and from there transferred to Briman Royal Mausoleum, where the final rites will be performed. Nane Ifya Kubisawa Ampim II died at the age of 111 after reigning for 39 years. She died peacefully in her sleep on Monday, November 14, 2016. She was installed in 1977 at the age of 72 as the 13th Queen Mother of the Asante Kingdom since 1965, after the late Nana Masewa Nyafun II, who reigned from 1945 to 1977. She saw the reign of 3 Asante Hines, Otumfuo Osei Ashaiman II, Otumfuo Opoku-Wari II, and her son, Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, who was installed in 1999. Metro News will bring you more updates.
Away from that, the majority leader in Parliament, Osei Mensah-Bonsu, has called for the support of the Israeli government in the implementation of the One Village, One Dam project pledged to Ghanaians by the NPP government. He said this when the Israeli ambassador to Ghana paid a courtesy call on the Speaker of Parliament on Tuesday.
The purpose of the visit was for the Israeli ambassador to Ghana, Ami Mel, to familiarize with the new speaker, Professor Mike Okwe, congratulate him, and to deepen bilateral relations between the two countries. In an address, the Speaker of Parliament recounted Israel's support to Ghana over the years, especially in the areas of agriculture, among others. Professor Michael Quay was hopeful that Israel will help Ghana improve its parliamentary structures.
There are very good points of not really financial aid packages as more technical assistance and cooperation this will try to begin in the next few years, and particularly speaking for planning.
While commending Israel for support in agri and infrastructural development, Majority Leader in Parliament, Ashaiman called for shared expertise by both countries to realize government's pledged projects.
The government of the day is talking about the transformational development agenda. It's talking about one village, one town, one district, one factory. And really, the base is developing agriculture. As far as agricultural development is concerned, Ghana has a lot to learn from Egypt, especially given the fact that this one village, one land concept is being spoken about in a particular Sahelian zone, Savannah zone. Yet Israel is the country that has conquered the desert. So we think that there's a lot that we could share.
Deputy Minority Leader James Kluche Aveji also called for Israel's support in the health sector.
We have very good systems that we can learn from. For example, your health management system is something that we can learn from. I remember the late Minister for Health, Honorable Courage Koshiga, had brought a system of health management here which was being practiced. Basically, it's not to depend solely on treatment, but prevention. So can we also, as Parliament of Ghana, learn something from that which you have in managing? So your health management system is something very important.
In response, the Israeli ambassador to Ghana, Ami Mel, noted that Israel is noted for other areas other than agriculture. The two countries are poised to deepen bilateral relations.
In business news, government has been asked to tread cautiously in its attempt to seek renegotiations of the IMF program embarked upon by the government of former President John Dramani Mahama. At a press engagement on Tuesday, Senior Director of Research at the Institute of Fiscal Studies said it would be suicidal for Ghana to abrogate the IMF program since the country has just a year to complete the program. The engagement by the Institute of Fiscal Studies was to expose some weaknesses in the Ghanaian economy while proposing some solutions.
Ghana's economy a few years back was described as one of the fastest growing economies in the world. But over time, this success has witnessed a sharp decline. At a press engagement organized by the Institute of Fiscal Studies, its Director of Research, Professor John Kwachi, highlighted a number of challenges facing the economy whilst proposing some solutions to them. Critical among the 10-point issue raised on the economy is the debilitating high public debt, which he described as an albatross.
Now, the IMF reports that Ghana faces a high risk of debt distress, with the debt dynamics being sensitive to potential shocks to the economy. Now, with the current debt to GDP ratio, it is being suggested that Ghana even risks returning to a HIPC status. Now, this should not be allowed to happen. And what are our recommendations? We recommend the following for the attention of the government. Now, target sustainable budget deficits and debt levels in the manner we have described above. Adhere strictly to expenditure and borrowing limits set by Parliament. Promote the domestic capital market to increase avenues for less costly domestic borrowing.
Another area of great interest is the restoration of the macroeconomic stability. Professor Kwachi had these suggestions.
Macroeconomic stability should be restored as a matter of priority and sustained to underpin economic growth. And here we have the following recommendations. Target sustainable budget deficits based on a stable macroeconomic framework. Improve fiscal management by addressing inherent rigidities in and better matching of revenue and expenditure.
Professor John Kwachi also told government to move quickly with its agenda on the agricultural sector, saying it will play a key role in reducing youth unemployment, something he described as a ticking time bomb.
The unemployment time bomb needs to be diffused with appropriately sequenced measures. And these are some of the proposals that we are making, for the attention of the government. We're asking the government to provide active support to agriculture, including through incentives mentioned that we have already mentioned above. Give priority attention to implementation of well-designed programs of public investment in agriculture.
On the IMF program embarked by the NDC while in office, the learned professor had this advice for the new government.
I know that one of the conditions of the program is a freeze on employment, at least in the public sector. Is there room, especially when the government, one of their key policy objectives is to increase employment? So is there room, to maybe negotiate on that? And then the issue of even taxes. There's a lot of taxes in the IMF program. Meanwhile, the government is saying that they want to roll back some taxes. So how do you reconcile it? So I believe that the new government will be sitting down with the IMF to renegotiate the program.
Meanwhile, government is being urged to create the necessary fiscal space to mobilize resources to fund the policies, including roping the informal sector into the tax net to broaden the tax base and the registration of the various business associations using technology. Frank Nyonato, Metro News, Accra.
Meanwhile, a research fellow at the Institute of Fiscal Studies, Dr. Saheed Wache, is backing calls by Finance Minister's designate, Ken Ofori-Atta, for some time before the implementation of tax cuts as promised by the NPP in their manifesto. According to Dr. Saheed Wache, governments must not make the mistake of implementing a blanket tax cut across board by implement one that is market segmented. Frank Nunato again reports.
My particular area of interest has to do with tax cuts. Yesterday, the finance minister designated did say that they are going to study and then take time before they implement a policy of, a tax cut. But here, it has also, at your press conference, it has also come up that government will need to not just implement a broad-based tax cut. What do you mean by that?
First of all, like I said during the presentation, the government has to take its time, study the situation. Of course, they made certain promises during the campaign, but campaigning and ruling are two different things. They don't have to rush into taking decisions that will have negative impact in the long term. The tax cuts, I believe they should take their time a little bit to study the system. But at the end of the day, the tax cuts should encourage industry, agriculture. Those are the sectors that are not doing so great, and it is the sectors that can generate employment for the Ghanaian people. So if you're doing tax cuts, it has to help the industry to do well. So you look at certain things like corporate tax. It was brought down in the 2000s, but now corporate tax has gone up a little bit. And if you can cut it, it will be helpful. But in the 2000s, what they did was they cut it gradually until they reached the level that they did reach. So they don't have to also just go ahead and cut it because they have promised that they're going to cut it. They have to take a gradualistic approach in achieving what they want to achieve.
Are you saying that when it comes to the issue of tax cuts, it must be segmented? Is that what you're saying?
Of course, because the fiscal situation is not so strong. When you cut the tax, in the short term, it could reduce government revenue. But it doesn't necessarily mean that in the long term it will reduce government revenue, because tax cut itself can induce the economy to grow, which will reap back the, the revenue that was lost. That's what I'm saying. It has to be done in a very structured, gradualist approach, so that we don't discourage or reduce so drastically government revenue that is needed now, because the fiscal position needs to be corrected in the short term.
So then basically what the finance minister designate, Kenneth Ofori-Atta, said yesterday, that the government will need to study the system a bit. It's not out of place.
Of course. I've ever given an interview to a newspaper organization that promising and doing what you have promised are two different things. Despite the fact that you have promised, if you come in, you study the situation, and it's not good for the economy, you don't have to do it. But I advise politicians, though, to minimize the number of promises they give to the electorates while they are seeking power. Nevertheless, whether they have promised or not, they have to do what is good for the economy.
And in news across our borders, Gambia's President Yahya Jammeh has declared a national state of emergency just 2 days before he is supposed to cede power after losing elections last month. In a national TV address, Jammeh said on Tuesday the 90-day measure was necessary because of the unprecedented and extraordinary amount of foreign interference in the December 1 presidential vote, which he lost to opposition leader Adama Barrow. He also cited external interference, the internal affairs of the Gambia, and the unwanted hostile atmosphere threatening the sovereignty, peace, security, and stability of the country. Meanwhile, President-elect Adama Barrow, who is currently in Senegal, is scheduled to take office on January 19th. He insists his inauguration will proceed as planned. And this is why we draw the curtains on News Night. Once again, we sincerely apologize for the late start, and it's due to the AFCON 2017. Paul Ademotri is coming your way with Good Evening Ghana. Thanks for watching. Have a good evening.